So we have the grammar left, but what we've done today is we've finished the writing. What we've done today is we've practiced in a controlled scenario within the bounds of PPP. Um, a very simple bit of summary or expository writing. And then we've looked at how we can even look at the same piece of writing or perhaps another and consider it an argument and highlight those arguments in a very similar fashion of enumeration and repetition, in a very similar structure, and deal with them and then counter them. And we've been given scaffolding. We've been given what we can term scaffolding, support language, not necessarily a model that you have to feel is a straitjacket, but a scaffold, a framework, and exemplars from which we can draw on to then support us in the writing procedure. My view of this next text is you're given two clear articles, so you don't necessarily need to draw on other sources. You've already seen what you did today was you didn't need to draw another source. All you had to do was suggest the fact that there are other ways of looking at the matter and call into through observations, call into question what the writer or the relayer or producer of information or knowledge is trying to say, impart, get across, convey. And that's what we'll be doing in the summary and the response. And then I'll speak to you later in the hope that for the third text, the multimodal, the picture books, the graphic novels, that they can go with you into your teaching placement, which we'll set up before you go, giving you time for a peer response. Hopefully the fact that maybe you just had it with you and took it into a classroom environment and then can consider its usefulness, and then you'll be able to also draw upon that very same expository and argumentative writing styles that we've practiced today. And perhaps in that second text, you can draw in a little bit more support from external sources if you want to. For example, Munden and Meyer et al. That we have for the course. For that project, which I'm not going to expressly highlight now because this text does not need a great deal of external sources and reference lists, there's an APA style sheet attached to the module for today. And in the extra lesson that I'm throwing in before you go away, there's a clean space and we'll deal with any issues. We'll use that time for extra grammar and I'll also answer any questions about citations at that point too. Which leads us today to pronouns for our last section. And today we are going to just have a little look through for the moment, giving us a chance to, we've had a focus on individual writing and accuracy today, let's be honest. There's been plenty of chance to monitor, which I've enjoyed. But whilst we're there today, I'm just going to take this opportunity to just have a little run through of pronouns and maybe relate it back to a couple of bits and pieces in our texts, because we'll come back and we're going to do exercises and work with pronouns next time, and with verbs and with adjectives and adverbs. So everything after this will be communicative again and in context. But just for today, I'm going to finish up with a little bit of a presentation of pronouns. You should have pages 62 to 64 under your belt, as it was in the prep for last lecture, not this one on grammar. But we're not going to focus on that yet at the end of the day. There's also some quite nice videos attached. The Khan Academy, for example, and an example of Schoolhouse Rock. So I've been mentioning pronouns all through the text, haven't I? I could probably highlight some of these bits and have a look at some of the examples we'll be going through. So we've got, as you can see, here are 6 basic kinds of pronouns. we've got a personal pronoun here. We've got that's got to be Boromir, isn't it? So Sheffield, where I come from, so it'll have to be. It's a barren wasteland riddled with fire, ash, and dust. It's Boromir from the Lord of the Rings talking about Mordor. Um, Personal pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, you, we, they. We've been, those are the subjectives as a subject, has been used consistently, hasn't it? Because I've been asking you where you're a bit confused as to whether it's what your subject is, whether it's singular or plural. So I've been writing into your text, and we'll continue to do that. Pronoun replacement therapy, which is by going back, identifying whether it's it or they, what the subject is we're talking about, in kind of a long, maybe a complex sentence, has allowed us to say, well, maybe we've got a problem with SVA, subject verb agreement. And you're going to get a lot of feedback for that on text 2 as well. So it's really important at the moment that we feed the grammar into it. So those are personal pronouns. And we can think of those in terms of, I've often talked about first person perspective, which is I or we, which we've been using quite a lot, haven't we? And we used in the blogs, if we think about the development, and we used it in familiar register. And then we've got second person and second person perspective, which is you and you singular, you plural. And we've been using that as well in our text, and even into an informal, we've said you do this, you as a teacher. And what we need to think about and what we're doing as of now, basically, as we go into formal writing in a formal setting and formal register, the almost totally dominant third person comes in as we go from subjectivity of the I's and the U's implicit in a one-to-one dialogue. We go into third person, where you've got a third person into a triangle in the room. So we're talking about something else the whole time. And that's an objective stance. So here you've got a third person pronoun. It is a barren wasteland riddled with fire, ash, and dust. We've also had a little bit of tingle-tangle, as we say in Swedish, a little bit of monkey business. No offense intended to the monkeys there. About demonstrative pronouns. Demonstrative pronouns. It's not the easiest of words. It comes from demonstrate. And sometimes I've gone in quite a lot and I've said, you notice today when we use model language, it always says this means, this involves, this is, referring back to the previous sentence. I think quite a few for all of you this is as well. I've gone in quite a lot and said it's not that, I've changed it and said it's this, you're referring back to the previous sentence. And this is normally something that's close to you in space or time, and something in the previous sentence then is normally considered this, unless it's a word chunk, like that's why, as an expression. So this, it always points to a noun and a noun phrase as well. That's quite important to know. So the example here as well, I think this must be Ian McKellen. This is no mere ranger, he says of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, if I'm not mistaken. Not sure if that's at the village of Bree or later. Then we've had possessive pronouns, which express ownership, possession. And I think one of the ones that we've had most fun with is it's, and confusing, rather like in this we've got it is, and the difference between it is and it's as a possessive pronoun, which we'll look at in greater detail later. Here it's the voice of Gollum. It's mine, my own, my love, my precious. Yes, Gollum sort of seems to use possessive pronouns in every word chunk or phrase. That seems to be all he has really to express is possession of the One Ring. Then, so we've got personal, demonstrative, possessive, and these are things that I may well then use to describe. I have to use them to describe language, and that's why they're quite important at this stage. Pronouns for 5 to 10s will be something that could be taught in an explicit grammar, but could also be discovered and investigated in a sense of exploration in a more communicative approach. But they do have dodgy names, don't they? Interrogative is a lovely word, isn't it? It just basically means questions. So you have interrogative pronouns, and I think this must be Gandalf, is it? What about very old friends? He might say as he knocks on the door of Bilbo Baggins. We'll look through the interrogative pronouns in a while, in a mini-mo. And then I've also used the phrase quite a lot, relative pronouns, in the assessment for learning, in the formative feedback. It always refers back to a pronoun, and we've had quite a lot of that clauses, which qualify a noun and kind of belong to this big noun phrase as well. The man that is standing over there is all a noun phrase and could be a subject. The man that is standing over there is a right plonker. So that would be noun phrase plus a verb, a similar format to how we've been expressing ourselves in our academic writing. Relative pronouns, this must be Gandalf as well. Showed all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. That's that lovely scene. Are they in the Mines of Moria? That's with Frodo, isn't it? Fantastic. I think Sam wants to kill Smeagol, doesn't he? And he says, some that deserve to die, that die deserve life. Do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Quantifying pronouns, some and any, are examples that are in our year 8, so that we have to work towards through primary, and which we then continue with through secondary. So that's a basic sort of run through of what we need to know in terms of terminology, and to describe language basically as well, whether we set it out as a formal grammar or whether we understand it in context and come to talk about it. We'll probably end up using very similar terms, and different terms for pronouns will be used descriptively through secondary school. So you've got, when we talk about singular plurals, we don't have gender per se, so it doesn't have, we have an en and an et, for example, in Swedish, 2 different cases, but English is non-gendered. The only issue is singular or plural, which leads to some of the issues that we've had in, excuse me, somebody's got to calling me there, I couldn't hear that. Which leads to some of the issues we've had with making sure that we have SVA, subject-verb agreement. You can see here it is the root of all evil, and they're very sharp. Here we have it is singular, the root of all evil, and they are very sharp into plural. We've also had issues with there is and it is. A very simple guide that I think I've actually been laying out, because that's a comment that's got into a lot of the texts as we've gone through. Sometimes there are exceptions, but one easy guideline is, not all the time, but very often, it is followed by an adjective, whereas there is nearly always followed by a noun. So we'll discuss that as well at greater length later. I haven't laid out the personal pronouns here, But we're going to have a look now in thinking about, we're getting up towards time as well, aren't we? Demonstrative. We have this, that, these, and those. And I don't think this has been a great issue in terms of getting singular and plural right. Sometimes it's a case of accuracy because we're going too fast. But one of the important things is to remember that this, in referring back to the previous sentence, is very important. It provides that kind of sort of cohesion in academic writing. So a previous sentence, when you point back to the subject or object and say this means, as we did today, just as when Gandalf realizes that he will have to face the Balrog in Khazad-dûm, and he says, "This foe is beyond any of you. Run!" Bless him. I'm not going to do a Samwise Gamgee because that is, I heard a great deal about a ring and a Dark Lord, but we're going to move on from that before it becomes me doing impressions. Then we've got those all-important its is something that's turned up a lot through the specific text type we've been doing, but mine, yours, his, hers, its, ours, yours, and theirs are called possessive pronouns. We can look at those in context later, but it was particularly looking through our text that it was its that we needed to think about in terms of our own writing. Also, I think we did pretty well on interrogative pronouns. What or which, what do you like is open, which do you like is a limited set of things, so you have to make a choice. There's a couple of those in a couple of the texts to look at. Who or whom or to whom or for whom can be used as an object, as an interrogative or question pronoun, we could call it. To be honest, it's often seen as overly formal or ceremonial and has disappeared almost entirely from spoken language, but would be preserved in phrases like "to whom it may concern," which does sound in register. I've made it sound like that. Super ceremonial. And then we've got that area of whose, as in whose line is it anyway, whose are these? And the possible typo or confusion with who is, which is something to look out for in text. Just generally, it's something that you go through and you have a little check to see where you are. We also had, we're getting up to time now, so we'll just have a little whiz through the last slides and set you off so we're ready for activities in our next lesson. So that can replace which, but not who. Well, no, it can replace who. What am I saying? So one just general rule or tendency that you can think for yourselves in your writing as well is when you're going to have what's called relative clause. The person who is standing over there, the table which is over there. Which there is replying to a thing, inanimate or an abstraction. Who is for people. A couple of people sometimes got that confused in a couple of those texts in a few places, more than, and that there were issues with generally that clauses and relative clauses. But that does both jobs in modern English, and that's something to remember as well. Who was the actor that was in that film? You know, the one with the hair. So that there is really a simplification of language and well worth using. So here, all we have to decide is what to do with the time which has been given us. Would be fine as well, but that does the job equally well and could replace who if necessary. So that's a little tendency shortcut, I guess, we can talk about. Let's have a look as well. And then the final set, we'll just slip over that as well because we're coming up to time, and I'd like to say goodbye for today and this little end up. We can have a short film to end up with maybe. We have got some or any. some denoting affirmative, any as negative or a question. So someone needs me is affirmative. Does anyone really need this is interrogative and a question. Could also be seen as negative, a contra affirmative as well. Anyone who, or the one who, yeah, I think could probably ship through the rest of this as well. We've also got everybody, everyone. One of the things that did turn up regarding that in texts was making sure that we agree that we've got SVA, subject verb agreement, that it's singular, and often we can see it does appear and did appear quite often in this kind of a construction with a relative pronoun here, who, before it. Everyone who tries this likes it. And so it was the verb agreement SVA with everyone singular with the tries and the likes it. Okay, so next time when we're on verbs, we'll be going through the questions 62 to 64. I'm going to send you a poll everywhere so you're ready to do it, just so we can practice and look at our pronouns. And we'll also be getting in, there's a moose on the loose in the hoose and he's reading Dr. Zeus. So we'll definitely be doing that. I don't mind. So that's going to be a bit more energy and fun to our next session at the start. I'm going to come out of sharing this and just have a little look back at where we are, just to end up the session as well. So if we go back to here, I'm in 5 to 10. Do finish up and just share with me or drop me a line on your Google Docs from today. You've got the expository, the summary, and you've got the argumentative or persuasive, the response. If you want to continue with your work there, you can get assessment for learning from your teacher. We are on the 16th. We are done with writing skills. Check. Okay. And for the moment, you've now got 2 bits of text production. Make it so. We're only just starting on pronouns now. Keep on blogging and just have fun with it. Keep that familiarity going. And then next week, you'll be here with me and we will do pronouns and verbs. And our focus will be primarily on grammar next week. We will do a peer response group. We'll probably cut down on the hours for that as well. So we'll fit that into the day. I may well change that day round. Let's say that right now. So we start off by doing a grammar in the morning and then some peer response in the afternoon to set us up and get us ready for the first draft submission of Portfolio Text 2 to go for teacher assessment, i.e. with me. And then we'll be going on to, so there'll be poll everywhere's out for pronouns and for verbs. I'll put verbs 1 and 2 together. And then the following week we'll be doing adjectives. This will start in the morning and adverbs. And we'll be doing any other work that day as well that's necessary before you go off for your teaching placement. Preparation for next time is going to be go away and get your sloppy copy ready to come in. I will post pronouns and verbs as poll everywheres. We'll do our peer response and we'll be doing grammar in action, that's for sure, both next time and the following session. Then you'll be doing your third peer response whilst I'm in York, and then we'll be coming back for a more double grammar trouble. So the time is now, let's have a look. Must be time to skedaddle. It's 3 o'clock, peeps. Which means it's probably time for me to stop the recording.